Hello gamers of the internet. If quarantine has somehow run the well of videos for you to watch dry and you ended up here, I apologize in advance. But nevertheless, my name is Shewy, and I come before you today an emotionally unstable 25-year-old who just wants to talk about video games. Now, let's be real for a moment. These last few months have been some of the toughest times we've faced in the world. And whether you're out there getting attacked by giant killer bees, or boycotting the latest Naughty Dog game, you'll notice that finding distractions is pretty hard. With these tough times and being stuck at home, it's only natural people develop newfound addictions. Alcohol to wipe the memories away, Animal Crossing for when the last embers of your soul are dying out, standing on your rooftop and screaming at God. Me? Well, I just bought a bunch of f***ing trash.
I can stop anytime I want.
So a local video game resale store I frequent finally opened back up, so I took it upon myself to start expanding my collection. They have every kind of system you could think of, from PlayStation 4 all the way down to Dreamcast games. Trust me, after being locked in the house for God knows how long, this felt like heaven to me. It's no psychological secret that spending money on things you enjoy can give you tiny rushes of dopamine and make your brain go into a haze of happiness. Once that fog finally fades away... oh god. I won't lie, I have an unironic love for games that are bad. They make fun little conversation pieces. You have your friend Steve over and he goes, "Is that a copy of Devil May Cry 2? And you go, "Yes, yes it is." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm sorry, we can't hang out anymore."
Steve, come back!
Not only that, but they're usually inexpensive, sitting in stacks of 50 copies or more and ranging anywhere from $3 to $10. Which makes me realize the money I just spent could have gone to a charity. I'm a terrible person. Some games you just have to add to your collection for being notoriously bad, and others you just can't help yourself. You walk away feeling less like you got a deal and more like you just signed yourself away to the devil and allowed a bad omen into your home. So, with that being said, I know you're probably foaming at the mouth just wondering what horrible titles lie in this trash trove. Well, I have 5 I picked out to go over today, and rather than picking them myself, I'll let the wheel of fate decide for us. Before we spin the wheel, I want everyone to say a quick prayer for my memory card, which I'm probably going to need to bleach and acid after this is over. Alright, we have 5 ways to inflict mental trauma to ourselves. Let's see what the wheel says. Let's just get this over with. So Shadow Man has always been a notoriously elusive game in the eyes of gaming critics and casuals alike. It originally started out as a comic series published by Valiant Comics, who was also known for other works such as Bloodshot and Eternal Warrior. The series made its worldwide debut in 1992 and became Valiant's biggest comic book series, selling well over 100,000 comics a month in its first year, which is pretty impressive in itself. Beyond just a cool looking design, we also learned that Shadow Man comes sporting some interesting powers such as paranormal strength, enhanced endurance and agility, night vision, the ability to regenerate, and various other voodoo powers. So, with a character as cool sounding and successful as that, what better place to take their success than the hot new growing medium that is the video game industry? With the rise of the Nintendo 64 and PlayStation during this era, it just made sense. In 1998, Acclaim Studios came out to announce they were partnering with Valiant Comics to work on a game for the series and was slated for release sometime in 1999. Flash forward a year later, and Shadow Man was released August 31st, 1999 on the Nintendo 64 and PlayStation, and later released December of that year to the Sega Dreamcast. Now that we talked about the history of the franchise, allow me to reenact the response of a PlayStation owner who picked up this game for the first time. So if you look at various images of Shadow Man on Google from the comic series, you'll notice he's sporting voodoo face paint and looks exactly how you'd imagine him to. So what the f*** happened here? This isn't Shadow Man, this is a great value Matrix character. Anyway, I could stare at the cover all day, but let's pop this bad boy in and see why my friend stopped talking to me. Well, I'm glad to know the character lives up to his name because I can hardly f***ing see him half the time. I'm not sure what happened here, but the visuals in this game are some of the worst I've ever seen. I've never in my life played a game where I've struggled to see what's going on while also simultaneously being blinded. The drab colors, the low pixelated as hell graphics, I can feel my corneas melting. But more on that later, let's get to the story. So I hope you like darkness and all things dark, cause oh boy, does the game have a lot of that, and I'm not talking about the gameplay either. The beginning of the game starts off with a monologue from Jack the Ripper of all people. Sure, okay, why not? A mysterious stranger named Legion invades his home and asks for Jack's help in finding these special souls known as Dark Souls that are going to be used to build this thing called a Dark Engine in a Temple of Pain he wants him to build so they can build an immortal army of the damned to take over the world. which is probably the weirdest flex I've ever heard in my life, but okay, you do you. Devoting himself to the cause, Jack pledges his allegiance in the only way he knows how.
It is prophecy. We cannot fail, for we are many.
For we are many.
We then cut over to this scene.
Don't you just hate it when that happens?
Waking up from a nightmare, Agneta spills some exposition like we're supposed to know what it means, but I'll sum it up for you as best as I can. Basically, there are 5 heralds of the apocalypse that are trying to gather their to help Legion's plan come to life, and it's up to Shadow Man and Shadow Man alone to help stop them. His response?
Okay, so let me get this straight. If I don't recover these then the world's gonna end. Am I right?
You got it.
Shit.
Yeah, that's how I react to most situations. We then meet Agneta in a church on a hill to gather our things, and this fucking nightmare fuel happens.
Okay. Let's just get this thing over with. You got my stuff?
Right here.
A real scare, Mikey.
Jesus, Luke! He's alive!
With weapons in tow, it's time to travel to Deadside and gather these So Deadside is a word you're going to be hearing a lot in this game, and it's actually one of the core mechanics of this game. In the game, you'll be traveling back and forth through the living and dead universe. If you die in the real world, Shadow Man is transported to the realm of Deadside, a dark and hellish landscape filled with evil creatures and this fucking nightmare fuel. This slithery annoyance is Jaunty, a character that looks like something that was ripped straight out of the Tim Burton universe with an Irish accent because it makes about as much sense as everything else in this goddamn game. Did I also mention he's really annoying? Don't believe me?
No, Seamus, is this an Irish cousin? What am I, a Dark Soul travel guide now? Did I ever tell you about the time me and Attila the Hun were playing skittles with the guillotine heads of the French aristocracy?
Jaunty.
If this is the first thing I'm greeted with on my way to hell, I'm demanding a refund. At first, I swear I thought this was an enemy, so I kept shooting him, wondering why he wouldn't die. Oh god, why won't you die? Please just die! To be honest, I don't really know why he's here or what purpose he serves. I thought maybe he was like a guardian of Deadside, or maybe he just lives down here. But I was too busy being annoyed with his voice to actually care. And that's about as much information as I can give you about the story. Oh no, not because I didn't pay attention, because this game literally drops you off like a mom at soccer practice and never comes back. You're then left to wander around the level where Shadow Man's only weapon is his gun, which you shoot by pressing the X button. But it's stupid slow and killing enemies can feel like it's taking forever. Speaking of this game takes the Dark Souls approach where it gives you no indication of where to go, what to do, or what areas you should do in what order. And whereas the setting of Dark Souls is charming to look at and gives you that urge to explore every nook and cranny, everything in Shadow Man is ass ugly and I just want to go home. It gives me no desire to explore further. There's no marker, no indicator, no nothing. The only way I figured out where to go is I eventually came across these colored doors that have a few blocks colored in. I figured out in order to open these doors, the number of Dark Souls collected needs to match the number of colored squares in the door to open it. But I figured this out purely on accident. So that means you have to memorize where you've been and how many souls you've collected to open doors you've seen in previous areas, which makes it harder because everywhere looks the same. And the only way you know you're somewhere you haven't been before is Shadow Man will spout edgy monologue that doesn't really mean anything.
This wasteland, this untamed, unnatural afterbirth I command with my endless darkness. The horror, I embrace it. Duppy.
I don't want to give the impression that I hate this game, but if this game was a pedestrian, I wouldn't hesitate to floor it. Look, the concepts themselves are cool and they had some really great ideas, especially in a lot of the settings. Take for example this Gothic castle looking area that's accompanied by some really great ambient horror music. I enjoyed my time here, for 5 seconds until the controls and platforming ruined it for me. And therein lies my biggest problem with this game, the god-awful controls. You think you know bad controls? Then I dare you to play this game. I don't know how they did it, but they somehow managed to cram in every single bad thing that makes a game unplayable. Inconsistent and hard to gauge jumps combined with extremely dark and unstable areas, platforming, and abhorrent frame rates that bring this game to a crawl. And I'm not even kidding, look at this footage where I'm simply just shooting enemies. I look like I'm moving at 3 frames a second. And I could forgive it if I didn't die often because of it, but what makes it even more frustrating is when you die, you have to start all the way back at the beginning of a checkpoint, which could be far away, which means you have to travel all the way back to where you were. But with all that working against me, I persevered. I traveled decrepit castles, I battled numerous monsters, I crossed dangerous lava pits, and in the face of adversity, I gave up playing after 3 hours. Look guys, the game is 15 hours long and I don't really hate myself that much to play it all the way through to the end. And as much as I wanted to see the ending, bad controls are what frustrate me the most. When you combine that with a game that has the color palette of puke, areas where you can hardly see, and frame rate issues, I'd argue it's hard for anyone to complete this game. So instead of making myself suffer, let's consult the good old internet. Also, just a quick shout out to the DHC Network for this ending and for doing God's work. So as I'm sure you might have guessed, the game ends out with a final battle with Legion. I mean, who else would it be? The boss fight is in 2 phases, one in Legion's human form, and once you pummel him enough, he turns into this disgusting bug-looking thing. Once Legion is defeated, Shadow Man transfers a dog soul to him, killing him off once and for all. Then the game ends like this.
I am the Lord of Deadside, walk earth between the worlds, immortal voodoo warrior. As a god, I stamp upon the writhing face of the Deadside serpent. Weapon in my hand, the arcing death blow, the horror, I embrace it.
Honestly, I'm glad I didn't finish this game. Seeing how it ended made me realize I would have just ended up suffering for nothing. I can say, without a doubt, this game is trash. I'm sad I can't even say this is one of those situations where it's so bad that it's good kind of game.
When you combine the poor frame rate, terrible gameplay, and awful controls, I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that Shadow Man is a terrible game and belongs in the Shadow Realm. But it's a good thing we'll never see this game again. Oh wait, hold on. What's that? They're remastering it for the Switch?
Oh, please don't be bad. So, Dead to Rights, a game that could honestly go either way. I've seen the cover and heard the name numerous times, and I always thought it looked super cheesy, but I honestly have no idea what to expect with this one. Reading the back of the box, we learn that we play as a cop named Jack Slate, and that his next call is about to change his life. Yeah. I remember when my next call changed my life, when I chose to make this stupid f***ing video. Anyways, the back of the game boasts that this game goes beyond Hollywood's best action movies, and that this is a performance of a lifetime. Well, hot damn, if the game is that good, then I've clearly been missing out my whole life. Alright, I'm actually excited. Let's see what this bad boy's all about. So, initially I feared my suspicions were wrong with this game. We start off with a decent CGI cutscene that actually looks pretty good for the time it came out, and it kinda reminds me of what you see in a James Bond intro. The cutscene contains about what you'd expect. Plenty of violence, shooting, a cute dog, and blood if you're hardcore. But of course, my intuition is almost never wrong because we start the game and... wow. This looks bad. Look, I know this game came out in 2002, but so did Metroid Prime, Ratchet & Clank, and the Resident Evil remake. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel they went a little too hard with the noir action feel. The colors look really dull and dark, and it's hard to make anything out. Especially in some levels where it's nighttime and you're expected to avoid getting shot in this bullshit. Not to mention, the voice acting is compressed to hell and sounds like it was recorded on a potato.
Not the most subtle way to get across, but hey.
Hey, you know what I love? Murdering innocent construction workers for no reason! No, seriously, why are we doing this? Who are they and why do they deserve this? Have your cop powers gone to your head already? So in the first level of the game, we're thrust into this construction zone that serves as nothing more than a tutorial level. And I'm just gonna say it, the controls are not good. Okay, maybe not good is not the right word, but it's not very beginner friendly and not very intuitive. For example, to target an enemy, you press the R1 button and then press the X button to shoot. Seems simple enough, right? Well, you'd think so, but pressing the X button also commands your dog Shadow to attack your enemies as well. Why that choice? What's the point of having 2 different attacks assigned to the same button layout? You press the circle button to disarm your enemies, but circle also allows you to use your enemies for cover. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, I will say you do get used to the controls after playing for a while, but the layout choices are still questionable and it's an uncomfortable experience for first-time players. Especially when this is the only time they tell you how to play the game. What, you expect me to memorize this? I can't even memorize what I had for breakfast this morning. Note to video game devs, just assume we're all dumb. It also takes a while. This control scheme took me a few missions to memorize and actually get comfortable with. And now that I've checked the controls off the list of why Dead to Rights is hot doo-doo garbage, let's talk about the gameplay and story. At the end of the first mission, we stumble upon a dead body lying in a pool of blood. Upon identifying the body, we come to learn that...
Who's that Pokemon? It's
My dad.
Yep, that's right. The dead body is Jack's father. Oh no. Oh god, that's horrible. And how does Jack respond to this horrible, horrible news?
He's my dad. Go home. Forget it.
Somebody shot my dad tonight.
And this pretty much sets up the plot for the entirety of the game. So as mentioned earlier, we play as Jack Slate, a self-monologuing super cop who responds to every situation he's in with puns and sarcasm.
Sorry, am I interrupting dinner?
Something smelled fishy, and it wasn't the sushi bar. Forgot the apples.
In this game, you'll play through the story as he tries to avenge his father's death and find out who's responsible. And how will he do that, you may ask? I mean, did you really think he was going to try talking it out? The game is about what you'd expect as far as early 2000s action games go. The game consists of 15 chapters to play through, with the completion of the game clocking in just under 8 hours. At its core, you'll be doing a lot of shooting, and I mean a lot of it. Now that may sound boring and typical, but they actually spice up the combat a bit to make it interesting with the implementation of gun fu. If you happen to be out of ammo and an enemy is nearby, you can walk up to that enemy and press the circle button, which will have Jack perform a variety of different flashy moves to steal the gun away from the enemy and kill them in the process. It's pretty neat, to be honest. You can also pick up the guns of any downed enemies as well to ensure you always have a supply of ammo at your disposal. And the best part by far is having Shadow rip out the jugular of our enemies and bring us their weapon. Who's a good boy? On top of the gunplay, every few levels or so will have their own unique minigame that ties into the theme of the level that you're currently in. For example, in the prison level, you have to gather packs of cigarettes for a prisoner as a trade so they can help break you out of jail. Beyond just beating up other prisoners, you have to do things like a boxing match, weightlifting, punching a bag, and even an arm wrestling contest. It's a little cheesy, but I actually found these moments to be some of the ones I enjoyed the most. There's even one that's a DDR rhythm stripper dance minigame. I swear that's a real sentence, and I swear this really happens. Huh. So this is what playing all that Guitar Hero as a teenager prepared me for.
No.
There's even this one minigame where you have to defuse a bomb by using both analog sticks to rotate and slide the pin out, and I swear I could spend hours doing this. They even made it playable in the main menu as its own minigame. Glad to see they recognize their true fan base. But that's about it as far as mechanics and gameplay goes. Nothing too spectacular, but it was fun enough to hold my interest. I honestly think this game is the perfect length. Any longer than 8 hours and I think I would have stopped playing. I can only take so much of Jack's puns. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the story. It's average. The best way I can describe the story in this game is a whodunit on steroids. Enter Grant City, a city filled with corruption and politicians. Wait, I said the same word twice. And at the head of it is a shadow organization known as Mayhem Inc. Jack is tipped off that Mayhem Inc. may be behind the murder of his father, so seeking answers, he makes that his first target. Now, that's all well and good, but this game makes it difficult to get attached to any characters or story that we see. Let me explain. In the second chapter, we have to go after a man named Augie Black. A man with a terrible Christopher Walken impersonation that doesn't make me feel bad for killing him in the slightest.
Whoa, Officer Slade. What brings you out on a night like tonight?
Really? Of all the voices to go with, that's the one you chose? Anyways, after we chase him down through the streets and think we have him cornered, we bump into another evil villain who kills the guy we were just chasing after. Can't remember the name of this guy, but he always makes me laugh because he reminds me of a custom character somebody would make in a SmackDown vs. Raw game. And the cycle pretty much repeats just like this. Just when we think we have our answer or try to get a valuable piece of information, somebody has to die. Oh man, who's this badass looking character?
Eve Adams?
Alright Eve, I'm sure with our powers combined, nothing will stop us, and you'll be an integral part of the story all the way through and nothing will stop—
No!
Oh god damn it. And this basically sums up the problem I have with the story. The villains and characters never have enough screen time or motivations to make them interesting beyond I'm evil and do bad things because evil. It just makes them less impactful and maybe not care as much. I was more eager to get the level over with than anything else. And the names of some of these characters certainly didn't make it any better. I'm not sure if this was done out of irony, but oh man, Namco. It feels like they had an edgy name generator in standby and spun it every time they needed to come up with a name for a character. Let's go over a few examples, shall we? Guy with an eye patch named Patch. Did they even try? Eve Adams. I'm sorry, is this a person or a sex shop? Ooh, anybody want to guess what the name of this guy covered in tattoos name is? Did you guess tattoo? Damn it, how did you know? I will admit, some of the level designs are cool and memorable. Some that stick out to me are levels like the prison level, the inside of City Hall, and there's even one that takes place in a graveyard. Then there's the enemy types, which, to be honest, aren't really all that interesting. They get cycled out every few levels or so, but you'll be fighting things like prisoners, construction workers, mercenaries, SWAT members, and oh yeah, did I mention that there's fucking clowns in this game?
Clowns with guns? I'll be having nightmares about this for months.
Yeah, this part was a jumping the shark moment for me. One moment you're paying respects to your father's grave, the next you're paying respects to the 100+ clowns you slaughtered. Then comes my biggest gripe with the game. the boss fights, and the big shooting sections. Now, I will give credit where credit is due. Some of these boss fights, as a concept and on paper, are cool ideas. Fighting a boss hand to hand inside of a gas chamber, giving you limited time to breathe unless you steal the oxygen mask away from him, cool. Fighting a giant boss on a rainy rooftop where the only way to beat him is by suffocating him, neat. Fighting a tank in an open field where there's hardly any cover and the mechanics hardly work, bullshit. No, I'm not even kidding. I spent an hour and a half on this fight because anytime I threw an explosive at this tank, it either clipped through the tank or got stuck in an area where I couldn't shoot it. On top of that, there are waves of enemies that come out during the middle of this fight, making you take that much more damage. The idea is cool and unique and all, but I can't remember the last time I was this frustrated at a game. Anytime there was a glimmer of hope or I thought I was close to beating it, I ended up getting annihilated. And this isn't the only instance of something like this happening in this game. There were several times where enemy placement and the amount of enemies overwhelmed me to the point where I got stuck on certain sections for 20 to 30 minutes at a time. Who knows, I may just suck at the game considering shooters aren't really my thing, but some of these areas felt horribly unbalanced. But nevertheless, I persevered, slaughtered thousands of lives that probably didn't deserve it, and got to the end. The twist ending? It wasn't Mayhem Inc. that killed your father, but another fellow officer that was at the scene of the crime at the beginning of the game who goes by the name of Hennessy. You're told this by the mayor of the city in one chapter of the game, who tells you that the case your father was investigating involved smuggling gold for the benefit of Mayhem Inc. and other politicians, and that Hennessy was involved as well and wanted the gold all to himself. Not wanting to risk your father finding out, he murdered him. So in the final chapter of the game, after the rest of Mayhem Inc. has been dealt with, we go after Hennessy to tie up this final loose end. The final fight is pretty cool, to be honest. You're inside this boiler room and fight hand to hand while fire burns around you, and it's pretty epic. The fight ends with you throwing Hennessy in the boiler and finishing him off once and for all. Jack then monologues that with no powerful figureheads at the head of Mayhem Inc. anymore, the cycle is doomed to repeat and there will be a power struggle once more.
With Hennessy, Blatz, and Fahook all dead, the inevitable struggle for power would begin. It would take an atom bomb to rid this city of crime, but I was fresh out of plutonium.
As for him, he hints that he wants to leave the city and forget about everything that's happened. And it only took getting everyone slaughtered to get here. All in all, I didn't hate this game. I think I was expecting a lot worse, but it honestly wasn't that bad. For a game that came out in 2002, I can appreciate some of the ideas and mechanics they tried to throw in the game to make it more interesting and fun. The gameplay definitely gets a plus for me, but as far as the story and characters go, it was about as vanilla as anything action-oriented goes for me. Super Cop tries to stop evil politicians and evil corporations that do evil things because evil. Oh, and also lots of explosions. In my opinion, it could have been something far more interesting and something much more, but overall, not as trash as I was expecting it to be. Apparently there's also 3 more games in the series, with the second one being a prequel, and the other 2 I know nothing about. But who knows, maybe we'll pick the series back up again one day. And now that we cleared out our palette with something not too bad, it's time to get sad again. Throughout the annals of time, humanity has always posed one singular question. What is a trigger man? Is it an overly sensitive gamer when you tell them that you like more than one console? Is it a gun with legs?
Or whatever the f this abomination is.
Enter Triggerman, capitalized by an Uzi and the T because we're hardcore. A game developed and released by Crave Entertainment for the PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Xbox in 2004. Wow, that's like 3 different ways to spread a disease. This was one of the games I saw in a stack of 10 copies, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll take one. Look, if Adam picks some apple from a tree and doom the universe, who am I to be any better? It only cost me the equivalent of my usual at Taco Bell, but if these scores are anything to base the game on, I'm willing to bet I lost way more than a few bucks. Alright, let's pop this baby in and pray that my PlayStation doesn't get some kind of virus. Alright, enter our first cutscene. I bet this is going to be good. What action-packed grittiness lies in store for us? Did I suddenly go deaf? Okay, so off the bat, you already start to notice a problem. There's no voice acting. Apparently the developers at Crave Entertainment were too cheap to hire any kind of voice actors, so everything is told through these text bubbles. And it's very awkward. I have never been this stunned playing a game before, and trust me, it gets worse. So I'll be honest, I had a hard time trying to come up with a script for this one, mainly because I'm still trying to process what I just witnessed. But you'll be happy to know that Triggerman does the impossible in making a 5-hour experience feel like you did nothing the whole time. This is a game where you literally perform a series of actions as a character, and that's it. That is all I can say about it. I have never witnessed such an unfinished game this bad my whole life. Graphics are god-awful, the enemies are super imbalanced, the controls are horrible, and for a character called the Triggerman, you sure die pretty easily. I have never played a game that's devoid of heart, soul, or anything that makes a video game a video game. Before I get ahead of myself, let me bring you up to speed. In this game, we play as the titular Triggerman named the Triggerman. I'll be honest, I was so bored the entire time and couldn't wait for this game to be over that I hardly paid attention to the story. They picked the most stereotypical Italian names for these characters in the most stereotypical crime story that I never bothered to remember the names or anything else. So, I'm just going to tell the story and how I saw it. Okay, so in this game, you got two families, and there's a conflict between the two families. You got the Stromboli family and the Linguini family. The Stromboli family was blamed for killing the member of the Linguini family, so they chose to seek revenge, and as a preemptive strike, the Stromboli family hires the Triggerman to go out and put a stop to the Linguini family. Okay, you following so far? So then we enter our first mission. There is honestly no way that I can prepare you guys for what you're about to witness. In fact, I don't want to. I just want you guys to be as awestruck as I was. Ready? Take a deep breath. Okay. These were my first moments with the game, and needless to say, I thought I was officially losing it because no way could anyone release something this bad. This is a real game. People made this and were paid. Maybe. Regardless of that though, how did this even make it through the approving stages? Who looked at this and was like, ah yes, this is a video game? For something that came out in 2004, this is inexcusable. The game contains only two kinds of missions, shooting enemies, which is about 90% of the experience, and avoiding being seen by the cops, which I think only happens twice in the whole game, and every second of it is awful. In fact, it's so awful that I got sick of dying so often and I just used the cheat to unlock every single weapon in the game. Yeah, that's right, f*** you society. The enemies felt the wrath of my hellish flames. I couldn't see any other fair way to play this game because the only weapons they start you off with is a pistol and a knife, and Triggerman is more fragile than a glass house. They pad this game out by making the enemies have stupid high damage, which means you die a lot. And believe it or not, it does not make me want to keep playing. They even threw in a cheat code to just completely skip levels, which tells me they knew this game was going to be shit. And not only that, but they made sure to make this game feel as painfully boring as possible by adding only 3 or 4 song tracks to the whole game. Which means you're going to hear the same songs over and over and over again. They play it so much that I can hardly tell the difference between any of them anymore. But I'll tell you one thing, they've actively made me hate Vaporwave. Another thing too, it only happens twice, but I have to say the missions where you have to sneak past the cops have to be the worst thing about this game. If you even so much as breathe, it feels like they know where you are every time. And there's never any good indicator of what counts as a good hiding spot or if they can even see you or not. So you're forced to hear this sound every time you get caught, over and over and over again.
Hold it! Hold it! Hold it! Hold it! Hold it! Hold it!
It's just mission after mission of shooting enemies to little or no music at all with constant deaths and some of the worst aiming I've ever dealt with. Anyway, let's start with the story really quick because I'm sure you all care. Listen, I had to read through all this, so you're going to listen. So long story short, the Terminator Triggerman kills the head of the Linguini family, which fuels the daughter's need for revenge against the Stromboli family, so she takes over as the head of the family. After a series of pointless missions, the final mission has us in a tough, near impossible final showdown with the DiGiorno daughter. Well, that was easy. With the Anamataguchi family out of the way, the day is saved, baby. And how does the game end?
I'm hollow inside.
Yeah, crave entertainment, huh? Yeah, you got that right. The game left me craving exactly that. And a swan dive off the nearest cliff. I have never played a game that made me feel like I just wasted my time on absolutely nothing. The case might as well be empty without a disc because that would be the exact same experience. This is by far the worst game we played out of the bunch so far. This makes Shadow Man look like a masterpiece.
Wait a minute. I get it. I finally understand. By playing the Triggerman, that's what it does to you. You become triggered. You become the Triggerman. Did I play right into the game's hands? Did I let the game win? I have to find a way to break this curse, but the only way is to pass the trigger on to somebody else. How do I do it? I got it. There, that ought to do it.
Well, okay. I think we're safe to move on then. Warriors of Might and Magic, a game that came out in the year 2000 and my first experience with fetishware. 2000 was an intense time for the world, not because of Y2K or anything like that, but because nobody was ready for He-Man and BDSM gear. So this game I'm already familiar with and I've tangoed with before. This is one of the games my dad owned, and whenever I stayed over at his house I would play it out of morbid curiosity. I never got very far in it, but all I remember it being is a third-person fantasy dungeon crawler. The game was created by 3DO, who I discovered as a company that started off making a console of their very own called the 3DO Interactive Multiplayer. This company had a lot to live up to at the time because they were going up against already well-established consoles like the SNES, Sega Genesis, PlayStation, and the Sega Saturn. Try as they might, due to a competitive and oversaturated market, weak game lineup at launch, and a high price point of $700 at launch, the console ultimately failed and production was cancelled 3 years later in 1996. And it's pretty sad nowadays, considering you can buy one off of eBay for about the 7th of what they were charging originally. From then on, they moved over to trying their hand at video games and worked on the Heroes of Might and Magic series. I don't really know too much about the lore of this franchise, but supposedly this game is a spin-off of sorts. It released on December 22nd of 2000 and was released to the PlayStation, PlayStation 2, and Game Boy Color of all things. The Game Boy Color version looks nothing even remotely close to the PlayStation versions, and supposedly it follows its own story. Alright, let's take a look at this and let all those repressing memories come flooding back. You start the game off in the middle of a public execution. Alright, who's the poor sucker that gets to die? Oh shit, that's us. We play as Aileron, a disgraced captain of the guard who's been tried with the crime of witchcraft and necromancy.
You stand accused of necromancy, witchcraft in its darkest form.
Wait, witchcraft in its darkest form. Could you excuse me a minute? So, where were we?
Before being banished, he has the mask of the accused placed on him as a mark of shame to follow him for all eternity. And then we get yeeted into a hole and the game starts. And I gotta say, this game is a breath of fresh air compared to everything else we've played. I can't tell if it's from how many brain cells I lost or if my perception is now warped, but this was honestly fun to play. The gameplay is fairly simple. You go from level to level slaying different kinds of enemies, picking up different weapons to increase your damage, and learning an array of various spells to cast on your enemies. You also have the potential to level up after killing enough enemies, and you can put your experience into things like strength, speed, endurance, and intelligence. A little side note, but I remember why I never ended up finishing the first level in this game. The noises freaked me out and are f***ing terrifying. No, seriously, let me paint this scenario for you. You're 7 years old, it's late at night, you're playing this game, and these are some of the first noises you hear in the first level. Fuck that. I remember when I played this game slowly going from hall to hall in fear that something was going to jump out and chase me, so I wussed out and just turned the game off instead. I guess that means the ambiance is pretty good, so good on you game, you get a gold star for adding to my childhood trauma. But in all seriousness, the combat is relatively solid. You get a variety of different weapons ranging from swords and shields to broadswords, axes, and maces. But there also comes a strategy when considering your weapon choices as well. Do I play it safe and go with the standard sword and shield so I have a better chance of blocking enemies? Or do I risk using a dual-handed strong weapon which will up my attack but leave me vulnerable if I don't block in time? There's also element-based attacks, and it works the same way as Pokemon where certain elements affect certain types of creatures. But I didn't bother to read and just took a guess most of the time. This tree guy's made of wood, so I just assumed the obvious. He never stood a chance. Oh yeah, and that's another thing I liked as well. The enemy types. 3DO honestly did a good job coming up with enemy variety for this game to make it feel like a true fantasy setting. You'll fight things like gargoyles, minotaurs, fish people, Groot, orcs, and even other enemy soldiers. It's a nice touch and it never leaves a level feeling stale because you're always wondering what enemy you'll be facing next. I'll be honest though, I was in a bit of a hurry to get this video finished, so I wasn't actually able to finish the game. As far as the story goes, I got as far as Aileron having to do fetch quests for villagers and a talking crow in order to get help in getting the mask off. I would have tried to get farther, but the difficulty level starts to spike way up after a few levels, and it feels like you have to grind to even make a dent in some enemies. Otherwise, your fights will end up looking like this. I enjoy the time that I had with this game, and it's definitely the best thing we've played out of the bunch so far. But then again, that's not really saying too much. If you like fantasy dungeon crawlers and want an older experience, why not give this game a try?
Alright, so we have one final game on the list, with that last game being... Oh no. God, no. No! No!
I'll be honest, I could have made this game a video all on its own. I have never seen such an enigma of a game shrouded in mystery and bullshit. There's so much to cover about this game that I'm not even sure where to start. So, I'll just start with the title. Dark Angel Vampire Apocalypse. You may think I just read off the name of some romance novel a mom in her mid-40s would read, but no. This game is quite possibly, and I mean no exaggeration here, the worst game I have ever played. So each and every game I've covered in this video, I've checked the length of in advance to see how long it would take me to beat, and how much time I should sink into it, just so I could get this video done in a timely manner. All of them had decently adequate times, except this game. Dark Angel Vampire Apocalypse has no recorded playtime on the entire website, and only has 2 user ratings. And God bless those poor souls, they're the only ones who survived. But when you type it into a Google search to see how long the game is, it comes back with a result of 400 hours. What the hell is this game? If these hours are accurate, then this game is made for those with an iron will and an unbreakable spirit. Not wanting to believe what I read and refusing to believe that this was real, I did some research and came across some Metacritic reviews of the game, and well, allow me to just read a few. If this is some kind of punishment for all those people who complained Onimusha was too short, then Metro 3D have produced what might be considered the ultimate gaming hell. Dark Angel is like a McDonald's value meal. It'll fill your hack and slash needs, but won't add any worthy RPG nutrients to your gaming diet. The 400 plus hours of gameplay is a disability if anything, for if you desire to play more than a couple dozen hours, you have a stronger constitution than I do, or are a glutton for punishment. So now that I've set the tone for this game and you've seen the testimonials, allow me to briefly delve into the history of Dark Angel Vampire Apocalypse. So this Frankenstein spawn of a creation was published and created by Metro 3D, a company who's known for amazing classics such as The Three Stooges for the Game Boy Advance and Arrow the Acrobat. What, you don't remember those? The game was released in North America on July 8th, 2001 to just the PlayStation 2. There were plans and even a trailer to hype up the release of the game to the Sega Dreamcast as well, but plans were ultimately scrapped earlier that year due to the Dreamcast being on life support around that time and high costs for developers to make games for the console. If you go back and watch the beta footage for the Dreamcast version, you can tell it looks nothing like what the game looks like in the PlayStation 2 version, which makes me wonder if the game was supposed to be something else entirely, but they had to change plans at the last minute. The game is a take on the gothic fantasy genre that plays like an RPG. When developing the game, the creators stated that they took inspiration from other well-known series such as Diablo, Strider, Fallout, Soul Calibur, and even The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, and they wanted to implement all the things that made those games great into their own. They also boasted that they built a graphical engine from the ground up that was supposed to utilize super flashy effects for the weapons, and that the game was supposed to take advantage of the PlayStation 2's alpha processor for great lighting and various other things. So all those things I just stated sound like the making for a good game. A proprietary graphical engine, inspiration from a few legendary titles. What could go wrong? Well, allow me to just press the start button. Alright, so do we get a cutscene or... Jesus Christ, what the hell? What's going on here? Where am I? What are those? And who the fuck is Brody? So off the bat, you already noticed the first problem. This game doesn't explain anything to you. This is the hardest case of whiplash I've had playing a game, and I've played all of Kingdom Hearts. The only way to know what's going on in the story is to read the manual the game comes with, otherwise, you're not going to know anything. So remember I told you this game is gothic fantasy inspired? Well, I think the developers need to look at the definition of inspired, because the name of the continent this game takes place on is literally called Gothos.
What?
We play as Anna, our main hero who is sworn to protect the land of Gothos from the evil Shadow Lord. Really? Shadow Lord? Shadow Lord. That's what we're working with here? Also, she's a vampire, which is weird to me because by the title I assume the vampires caused the apocalypse and she's the Dark Angel. So is she a vampire or a Dark Angel? This doesn't make sense! Also, apparently Gothos is the smallest continent ever because it only has 3 cities in it. Also, I don't really know what the devs meant when they said they built the engine from the ground up for this game, because this game looks terrible. The settings all look the same, everything is dark and dim so you can't see anything, and all these villagers exist to solely haunt my dreams. I swear I could never tell what city I was in half the time because they all look identical. Also, Anna doesn't look too good, and neither does this guy. Or this guy, or oh god, I can't look at it! So I had to look it up to even understand what the goal of this game was, but apparently we have a year's time to grind through various dungeons, level up as much as possible, and gain special weapons to fight the final boss, the dreaded Shadow Lord. You can do this by accepting quests from various villagers that range from rescuing people in dungeons to collecting important items. You don't also necessarily have to accept quests either, you can just run into any dungeon of your choosing and grind for hours. And I hope you like dungeons because that's all this game is, dungeons and grinding. Oh, and don't worry about what dungeon you choose, because they're all uninteresting and uninspired. Do you want to explore a dungeon that's the color of brown, or forest? You also have a variety of different weapons you can equip on any of the main 4 buttons, like swords, scythes, two-handed swords, vampire swords, and katanas. You can obtain these weapons by either buying them from merchants in villages, or killing enemies and hoping for a good drop. Each weapon also has a type that affects certain types of monsters, but I didn't care enough to learn. Oh, and while we're at it, let's talk about the music in this game, or lack thereof. While you're exploring dungeons, there are times where random rock music will cut in briefly while you're slaying enemies, but then sometimes it just stops and you're awkwardly fighting to the sound of nothing. I can't explain it, it just happens with no rhyme or reason. I would talk about more, but that's it. That's the entire game. Accept quests, explore dungeons, kill monsters, level up. 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 Oh, and also die a lot. Anna dying is one of the only parts in this game that brings me joy, and not just because I'm released from the shackles of this game for a few moments, but because the death screen shows Anna's face with various random text at the bottom, and it's always different. Some of my favorites include, "I'll be back," "Again," and "Ouch." That alone sums up this entire game perfectly into one singular word: ouch. This game is the most soulless, empty, and draining experience I've ever had playing anything. Even the history behind it is more interesting than the game itself. Just, what went wrong? Who looked at this and was like, yeah, this looks good? It feels like they way overhyped it and couldn't pull off any of the things they mentioned. They tried to do what Diablo did, but it came out looking like a reanimated corpse instead. So seeing as I'm still alive to tell you about all this, that means I didn't finish the game. Sorry to you hardcore Dark Angel fans out there, but I'm not about to pour 400 hours into this game. That's time I could be spending on other things like crying. However, fear not, for there are braver souls than myself out there who actually managed to beat this game. So without further ado, let's see how this final year-long showdown comes to an end. Also, I just want to give out a huge shout out to CrazzyCrisis for this footage. You are truly a god among men and deserve all the anime girls. Be sure to check out his video, which I'll link below. So yeah, the final fight is no different than fighting any other enemy, and what do you get for winning? That's right, a code that has no place to be entered, no spot in the main menu, and no known way to use it all across the internet. I seriously scoured the internet for hours trying to figure out what this code was for, but the majority of threads I found didn't know the answer either. Nobody knows. I'm not sure what the code was ever intended for, but it's lost to the sands of time and we may never know. I've barely seen this game talked about, and for good reason too, but this code should go into one of the greatest gaming mysteries of all time. What was it supposed to be, and would it have made this whole experience worth it? To wrap up this whole experience, future plans for more games were in the works that were set in the Dark Angel universe, with one being a first-person shooter that was planned for the PlayStation 2, and 2 more simply titled Dark Angel 2 and Dark Angel Anna's Quest. These were up on the company's website at the time, stating that they were in development, but were never published or saw the light of day. In my opinion, I chalk it up to the first game's poor reception, but who knows, anything is possible. Eventually, Metro 3D filed for bankruptcy in 2004 after relying on too many loans and owing over $6 million, and was inevitably shut down. Part of me is saddened that we'll never see a sequel to this series. A morbidly curious part of me really would have wanted to see how the series would continue, and I just have so many burning questions about the game still. What was the code at the end of the game intended to be used for? Why did they make this game 400 hours long? Why did they think this game was a good idea? And more importantly, who's gonna pay for my therapy? These are all questions we may never get the answer to, but I guess some things are just better left alone for now.
And with that final game out of the way, I can finally say, I'm exhausted. Reviewing 5 trash games for our first video was honestly pretty exhausting and a lot to slog through. I intended for this video to be done months in advance, but this took me about 2 months to make. But nevertheless, I hope you guys enjoyed my financial mistakes and pain. But regardless of what I went through in this video, I can honestly say without a doubt that collecting bad video games is still a fun pastime for me. I can't really explain it, but it's just a nice little conversation piece to have in your collection, and it's also a nice little look back on history to see what was considered bad game design at the time. But, that being said, there's only one place left for bad games like these to go.